I will start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As Dr. Musalleh said, this is the seventh lecture among the lecture series, Hikmah, Wisdom in the Qur'an. We will discuss it in the context of story of Abraham in Surah An-Nahl. But before that, maybe I first have to say I'm very happy one more time got the opportunity to be with dear brothers and sisters of Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society of New England and ZEC MIT Shia Muslim Association. And as I said, this is our seventh lecture of the lecture series of um, Hikmah in the Quran. But as we mentioned, there is a little bit left from the last lecture, or maybe more than a little bit. It could be half an hour. We will finish that and we go forward to the new topic. So, the as usual, I will start with these verses for the barakah and also related to what we were discussing. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤتى الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. He grants wisdom to whomever he wishes, and he who is given wisdom is certainly given an abundant good, and none takes admonition except those who possesses intellect. We said that there are 20 instances of the word hikmah used in Quran in 19 verses. These are the order we see them in the Mus'haf, Mus'haf Osmani, which we use regularly. But we classified them in four categories in the first lecture. In one group, hikmah given to previous prophets, hikmah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, hikmah to the non-prophets, two examples, and the primary duty of the Prophet Muhammad, which is among them is teaching of hikmah. But so this is one way categorization we did, and maybe the categorization which we follow is a chronological order of revelation. We use Noldeke chronology, but it doesn't change. Essentially, all other chronologies will follow more or less the same. And then so 6 instances of the hikmah are in Mecca surahs, and then other ones are in Medina surah. We discussed the previous one. We are going to discuss the continuation what we were discussing in Sūrah al-Zukhruf, which is the hikmah given to previous prophet Jesus. Then today we go to the Surah An-Nahl, and then okay, this is the order kind of the discussion will go forward in these lectures today. So to refreshing your mind, although we did most of the discussion last lecture, I just recite the verses related to Surah Al-Zukhruf because that hikmah verse is part of a passage, a block, we call it pericope. So I read it, but I discuss only the parts which is left. So when the Son of Mary was cited as an example, behold, your people raise an outcry. They say, are our gods better or he? They cite him to you only for the sake of contention. Indeed, they are a contentious lot. He was just a servant whom he had blessed. He was just a servant whom we had blessed and made an exemplar for the children of Israel. Had we wished, we would have set angels in your stead to be your successors on the earth. Say indeed he is a portent of the hour, so do not doubt it and follow me. This is a straight path. Do not let Satan bar you from the way of God. Indeed, he is your manifest enemy. And this is the verse with hikmah in it, when Jesus brought those manifest proofs, he said, I have certainly brought you wisdom, or which is hikmah, and I have come to make clear to you some of the things that you differ about. So be wary of God and obey me. And so we said in this passage, as you see the first verse, God refers to some objection by polytheists of Mecca, which they kind of saying, if you are praising Jesus, so why you're criticizing our gods? Because it seems their understanding was we discussed the surah, which was before Surah Al-Zukhruf, which have extensive discussion about Jesus, was Surah 19, Surah to Maryam. And in that surah, we have discussions of Hazrat Yahya, Hazrat Zakaria, and Hazrat Maryam, Hazrat Isa. it seems, at least if we take this mushrikin sincere, they understood that the Quran is praising Jesus, um, and then maybe not criticizing most Christians. So they assumed the Quran understanding of Jesus is similar understanding of Christians. Uh, this we said is, there are some levels. I mean, it is possible this mistake is sincere. Especially we said if the block of verses 34 to 40 has revealed later, but we also said the Surah al-Ikhlas also already has been revealed, and a very clear criticism of God not taking children and not giving birth to anything. So maybe their criticism or their argument was not very sincere, but their core of their argument is this: our gods, our what we take gods are God's daughters, are angel gods. But Christians are taking a human God. So isn't our God, which are angel gods, superior to uh, Christians, human God? And if you praise Christians, so why are you criticizing our gods? This must be the argument of them. But the point is that Quran is not praising Jesus or accepting the Christianity, Christology. I think it's severely criticizing it. In the Surah to Maryam is there too. Okay, maybe the first 33 verses, as I said, is not very clear, but the 34 to 40 make it more clear. And then also Surah Al-Ikhlas make it more clear, because there are not many other examples before the Surah Al-Zukhruf that any revelation regarding Jesus has happened except Surah Maryam. And then in this passage, Quran used not only answer the mushrikeen, but use the occasion to again criticize the Christology of Christians. And that is not very clear, or many of commentators have missed it. That's the new point. As I said, we also our discussions follow the Saddam Hussein's PhD thesis, and then some of the things has become clarified in his thesis, very interestingly. But you look, Quran in response mentions four characters of Jesus. First, in Surah 59 says he was only just our servant, which we gave him some blessing. This blessing could be all his miracles or his type of birth or his mother and so on. And then he put him an example or an exemplar for Bani Israel. So it can totally reject the divinity. And then even goes emphasizing God power, that he says, no, even being, none of those miracles by Jesus, which Christians interpreted as sign of his divinity, really a sign of divinity of Jesus. And then even God can make more, not only can replace humans with angels, but can also, and if you look reading carefully, it says menko, that is coming angels out of you. So the wording kind of totally and somehow says, look, is God, for God is easy. Neither human God or not angel God, they're not really any of them could be God. So we discussed this extensively last lecture. So uh, this is the uh, topic which I already had to discuss, but I want to a little bit discuss it again. And it is this verse. And then let's go show you, and then we do, so verse 61 we want to discuss now briefly, and 63, which is the main one. Look, here the wording says, maybe I show it in the slide. Okay, look. Uh, Okay, look, if you're reading carefully, it says أنه لعلم للساعة. And then some of the English translations have taken it portent. Portent means sign. We have a reading says لعلم للساعة, the sign or نشانه. But here is the قراءة. And the Qur'an is knowledge of the hour. Look, so I have four translation here. Two goes for the knowledge, Al-Mizan and Sarab Sain. And then study Quran and Qara'i translation go for portent. Portent is essentially alam. Uh, Okay, that other reading could be maybe the correct reading, but it's not the one we have. What we have in our mushafs, awesome Barawat is not that. And then Sa'd Hussein argue, although this ilmun lisa'a is a little bit at first awkward, even alam lisa'a in some sense overlaps. The meaning here will overlap with alam, sign, but here is knowledge. But it seems this awkward wording is deliberate to reject some uh, prevalent Christology of Christians. So let's at least read the reading. Maybe go with the Sa'd Hussein itself. His indeed knowledge, ilm of the hour. So he himself is knowledge, or at least somehow embodiment of knowledge of the hour. So do not doubt it and follow me. This is a straight path. Okay, look uh, how the traditional Muslim scholars understood this verse. So we go few levels. Traditional, maybe I'm saying the famous commentators, Sunni commentators, so on. They really mostly understood it as alam or ilm in this sense. One idea they have is this. Okay, some understood it as ilm, but in this sense, they said, okay, we know that Jesus has raised to heaven. He has not died, and he will come back again. He will come back again um, to the earth at the end of times. And when he came back again, the end of times, his second coming, which like that with Shia belief also is there too, that with Imam Mahdi, then we know the end of times is close. So in this sense, seeing him again, his second coming is kind of a knowledge or sign of end of times is close. That's many Sunni commentators have gone, and it's come to the Shia too. And then they have said, reporting a hadith, that Prophet is reported to have said, one of the signs of the hour will be the appearance of Jesus, the son of Mary, before the day of resurrection. So again, they mostly translated sign, but sign which could give elm. That's the way. But even with the second coming, not what he was doing till that time, which because this mostly it's a discussion at that time, but what he has done in his life must be there. And okay, this is one way looking at uh, uh, okay, but Al-Mizan goes a little bit through our is very brief, I will say it, but then we'll expand on it, and a longer expansion, which shows that yeah, the Alama's intuition, I think, is matches what the Saga was saying had, and he's a writer one. Uh, so look, first we have to know this sentence is not easy, and then some people say, okay, what where who returns to? I mean, some even take you to Quran. I'm not going to go all the possibilities. We don't have time for that. But we assume, okay, referring to Jesus because it makes sense to be Jesus. Uh, and then the null, if we accept the translation Allama has done or the translator has done, but it matches Farsi, Allama says, look, the pronoun nahu at the beginning of the verse, referring to Jesus, and knowledge, which is not alam, ilm, here means that by which something is known. For example, ma yu'lamu bih. So something is known by that. So by knowing Jesus or seeing Jesus, you somehow know something about the Sa'ah, which is end of times or resurrection. Uh, and then what is about Jesus make you to know end of times is not his second coming of at the end of times, which I mean that's not even certain in even Shia tradition. We have to be careful. That is based on hadiths that some of them are maybe late, but although it's widely accepted, I'm not disputing that. Okay. But that's neat work. But okay, what it is this? It is by the miracles he manifested And the miracles of him, which is listed in the Quran, we will see it. For example, Surah Al Imran, those are all a good examples if somebody reflects on it of regarding the hereafter. Okay, what are these miracles? First, he was created without father and raised the dead. And then we see the full list example of them. So by knowing Jesus, by knowing miracles he did, we know that our is very possible. That resurrection is possible, and that's the idea. Okay, that's the idea. It's here. Okay, so this is one line. Allah says this one line. I mean, I will expand on it. It is correct, which is I think no other commentator classical said. So let's say it again. I can read it in English. The meaning then reads: Indeed, by Jesus is known the hour in that he was made without a father, and he raised the dead. So from Jesus you can know that the hour is indeed possible. So never doubt the hour. And then the rest is okay. Follow me. Follow the straight path. And then it's some question is who who's saying this sentence? Is it God saying? Is prophet saying? Because sometimes they have translated "follow me" as capital. I'm not going to go through those disputes, so I don't think will help us much. What we are looking, but let's go forward. Okay. Uh, the point is this: in Christianity, Jesus is an embodiment of the knowledge of God and being his image. This is very important. And I think some shade of this idea is also exists in Shiism. I'm not going to discuss that, but sometimes it is said not only the Imams can teach you about maybe the Sharia, Islam, Quran, but knowing Imams is the best way or the way to understanding God. And I think there are similarities here. But this is now a discussion. Go away. I will come back one more time. Such an idea again, we'll see. But let's focus on that because this will take us very away from what we have to say. But they really for them, so the Quran is said knowledge of our, not knowledge of God. And that's exactly what Quran is pushing. And by using this a little bit awkward wording, Quran is deliberately targeting that large view in Christology that Jesus manifestation of God, Jesus God, and divine, and then knowing Jesus, you knowing God. So in Christianity, Jesus is an embodiment of knowledge of God, being his image. There are verses in New Testament that the very famous ones, John 1 started with it, which is the start of pushing toward the divinity. He's Logos. And what is Logos? We said those you have to go to those Plotinus theories of those, we call it ʿabd, the the 10 intelligences was created by God. I briefly go last time, but let's for now ignore that. His logos, what logos is a long discussion, and his wisdom. Okay, so these are some verses. And then you have this verse that many evangelicals also recite. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. So somehow here is a teaching wise of knowing God, but very often it goes further that knowing Jesus because is somehow divine is knowing God. So knowledge of Jesus is knowledge of God. This is very common. And then in Christianity, the miraculous sign of Jesus, which are listed, some of them listed in Gospels too, similar to the Quranic ones, are always a sign of Jesus' divinity. Uh, so they believe in Christianity, they believe Jesus revealing his own divinity through these signs, which is these miracles. And then is not only the Gospels, you see some other many early church fathers or scholars and other books, later ones, all saying that the purpose of miracles is to show divinity of Jesus, which is not in Islam. Definitely in Islam, miracles all other prophets do miracles, and miracles all done by permission of God, and just power delegated some authority power to the prophets. But what we want to emphasize, if you read carefully, and that's what Allah said, and here we expand on it in Quran, the specific list of the miracles of Jesus. Actually, if you reflect on it, especially the verse 349, which we, as example, will reflect on it, a guide or a hint to the reality of hereafter. Because you can have many different miracles. Although, I mean, one sense you can interpret all the miracles somehow relate to hereafter too. But for example, splitting the sea, or the staff becomes serpent, is not as clearly indicating hereafter. But as we want to argue, that list of the miracles of Jesus, which come in the Surah Al Imran, verse 49, and which has very the list has commonality with the list given in the Gospels, is a very good indication or hinting to the hereafter. So in this sense, Quran is emphasizing, no, not only Jesus is not divine, which also we discussed previously was ḥabd, but also Jesus is not a knowledge of God or embodiment of God or sign of God, but is a knowledge of hereafter. So Jesus' description and knowledge of the hour in the Surah al-Zukhruf, in the Jesus pericope, which we're discussing, is a conscious rejection by the Qur'an, the Christological view that he's being knowledge of God. So, the wording is ordinary people which do not know Christian theology maybe would not get it. And then maybe they think, okay, it was better it was used instead of ilm, alam. But if you keep it ilm, which effectively has in it alam, but then you give a word that the guy which is expert, a Christian scholar which knows theology, he clearly gets what Quran is targeting, because this pericope is exactly against, in response to mushrikin, is also anti-polemic, as a polemic against Christian um, um, theology. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think I did yeah. So look, the verse 49, let's see it. I just read it in English because I want to do some discussion about it. And he will be an apostle. So it's about Jesus, and he will be an apostle to the children of Israel, and he will declare, I have certainly brought you a sign from your Lord. So these means miracles. I will create for you the form of a bird out of a clay. Then I will breathe into it. And this is like a birth of humans, and the birth of creation of Adam. And if it become a bird by God's leave, I heal the blind and leper. I revive the dead by God's leave. I will tell you what you have eaten or what you have stored in your houses. There is indeed a sign in that for you should be you faithful. So you see a list of miracles. The birds are created from clay, and they're curing the sick people, raising the dead, telling you what you eat and what you store in your houses, and so on. And as maybe Neil Robinson noticed, the language of miracles, this is the idea I said, kind of is my idea, but I'm repeating and expanding on it. So the language of miracles listed in Quran 349 is usually reserved for God's creative power. So some of the wording, some of the terminology used in this verse 349 matches the terminology of the wording or God usually used for its creative power, but related. So, for example, does creation from clay and breathing life into it strongly reminiscent of God's creation of man with the same vocabulary of khalq? So these are the naf, breathing and creating. So I'm not going too much through it. There is also an obvious overlap in both theme and wording between Jesus bringing dead to life and God's eschatological resurrection of the dead. So most Mufassirun and modern scholars have focused on the repeated phrase by God's permission. So they focus, okay, Jesus said, I do this by God's permission, which is clearly intended to counter any argument that may be put forward for divinity of Jesus based on his miraculous deeds, which, as we said, Christian theology was doing it because the miracles usually was sign of his divinity. But there is one level question we can ask, why why these specific four miracles have been listed, or what these specific four miracles can indicate, which maybe the staff becomes serpent, or the splitting of the seed, or the or no. I mean, many of all those other miracles somehow can. For example, Jonas also somehow is indicating our resurrection somewhat. But anyway, uh, at least by this, but some other miracles are not as clearly in that line. So let's see. Uh, uh, so it seems these miracles trace out the entire life cycle of humanity from creation to final judgment. So the first miracle was reminiscence of man's creation from clay, following what God breathed into his spirit. The second miracle that Jesus cured the blind and leper can be read as the echo of the Quran description of the physical development of human being from a weak and a helpless fetus to full strength. I mean, this might maybe not closest one, but okay, that could be. And then we have other verses. Quran says, for example, it is God who created you from a state of weakness, then he gave you power after weakness. And God has brought you forth from the bellies of your mother while you do not know anything. He invested in you with hearing, sight, and the heart so that we give thanks. This second miracle is he can make it, but I'm not sure it's the best parallelism. But the other ones, I think, are very good, clear. Following the second miracle, which parallels birth and maturity, the third one, the revivification of death, represent the progression to death and the resurrection. And this, of course, has innumerable Quranic parallels with God as the subject. Um, so, for example, in Surah Al-Imran, verse 27, when we read, uh, God bring forth the living and from the dead, and bring forth the dead from the living. Or verse 150 said, but God gives life and brings death. And then the final miracle, which is Jesus informing people about what they eat and what they store um, in the privacy of their homes. It kind of parallels the final judgment, which God will inform humanity what they have been doing, all the secrets, and then even the Quranic verse says, "Oh, nothing is hidden here." The mushrik says, or the kafir says, "Oh, whatever we did is all here." So it's exactly the same level. So the verb used in the miracles verse, for example, verse naba, to inform. So uh, is predominantly used here. Jesus used the word naba to tell you what you consume and hoard, and exactly usually is that word used for telling about the final eschatological judgment, recounting personal deeds. So seeing this list of miracles mentioned in that verse and other places where Jesus really, we can say, okay, Jesus is a sign or knowledge of the hereafter, and uh, not not God. So in Quran, Jesus' miracles, therefore, which is in the Gospel of John and pseudo-Clemente recognition point to his divinity, have been rewoven to point to a single reality after the human being's creation, birth, and maturity, death, and resurrection. There will be final reckoning. So Jesus, through the miracles he performs, has thus become a living allegory of human life on earth, ending with judgment before God, his embodiment of knowledge of our. So now we interpret this third verse, that knowledge of our, or sign of the hour, really in which way Jesus is, and the simultaneously denying his divinity, but also giving a new dimension to Quran's Christology. Uh, Now we go to this now next verse, the last verse of the previous discussion, which is regarding Hikmah. So again, I read the maybe now Sarah Hussein translation. When Jesus brought clear proofs, al-bayyanat, which again people understood the clear proofs of the miracles, he said, "I have brought you wisdom, and I have come to make it clear to you some of the things that you differ about. So be wary of God and obey me." So in this verse we have three things. He came with hikmah. Uh, no, جاء بالبينات, first بالبينات, and then bring you hikmah. So coming with the clear signs, clear proofs. coming with wisdom, and in some sense means teaching wisdom, and then to clarify the things you have dispute or differences about. Um, so this, I will go to the traditional way of discussion. Okay, many commentators said, okay, all messengers usually bring clear proofs. That's the Islamic view of prophethood, that messengers should have some kind of miracles, sometimes evidence that to show to people really messenger of God. So usually they have a kind of bayana. And then other bayana is understood to be evidentiary miracles, but so we're talking about this part. But some people also add the uh, besides the miracles is prescriptions of divine law. Maybe those rules or injunctions, maybe the wisdom containing in them, it was the sign of higher wisdom. This kind of, you see, Fakhr Razi and so other commentators have used that, but we don't need to worry about that. I just list the things and then we go to our own discussion. Some, again, as usual, understood, oh, Bayyana means gospels and its injunctions, which I really don't think so. And then for evidentiary miracles, okay, we saw the list, so we don't need to worry. If we take the miracles as which we do by Yanat, we saw them speaking cradle, healing lepers, raising the dead, breathing life into a bird. So there is no point in it. So by Yanat, I think as miracles, and we know the list of miracles, some evidence. Uh, I mean, Gospel or the book itself for Prophet Muhammad, Qur'an is his miracle, but whether Gospels are is another story. But wisdom, let's go to the wisdom. Many people, commentators said wisdom is the prophethood, which prophethoods contain wisdom. But this, I think, this one is more close to the gospel, actually. The message he brought, the advice he brought, the moral uh, interpretation, a deeper meaning of the law, deeper meaning of the law of Torah he brought, that's really the wisdom. But okay, wisdom was understood as reference to prophethood or to the gospel and its revealed laws, or we can say is gospel does not have much revealed laws, actually, is reinterpretation or giving inner meaning of the Torah, which is the law. Some people have said it can also be understood to mean the knowledge of God's essence, attributes, actions, which could be but the one which, okay, they have discussed لو بين لكم بعض الذي تختلفون, to make it clear some of the things you differ. Most say to make clear to you some of that wherein you differ refers to Jesus' clarification of the rulings of Torah regarding which Jews disputed one another. Yeah, that's true. We know there were serious disputes, maybe not some for us serious, but you see the trace of it in Gospels. They debating, Jesus is debating the Pharisees, the religious scholars, and they tell them, okay, you say that, but is this, or why you do this? For example, regarding Sabbath, regarding punishment, regarding washing uh, your hand before eating, sitting with other people. There's many disputes, and especially if you read the gospel knowing the Jewish background, which sometimes we don't. But there is a book, actually, a Jewish scholar, I forgot the name of the lady, wrote. Uh, yeah, exactly, wants to put that Jewish law background to the, especially a Sermon of the Mount, which is beautiful and has really wisdom or moral side of it's very strong and affecting admonitions in it. But then if you know what he's somehow he's referring to, becomes more clear. Um, and then some people also understood that Jesus came to explain to them the distortion which they have done to the Torah. We don't have much record in that. Jesus usually dispute, at least if we go to the Gospels, dispute with the interpretations, not the text. But but that's the record we have, and the Christianity today somehow accepted the Old Testament. So again, takes us far away from our discussion. So it's not that. Uh, and then the last sentence, we'll come back to this because this is, I said, general commentators from study Quran. Uh, the last sentence, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونِ, is usually the sentence many other prophets have said in Quran too. In Quran, even verse 50, Surah Al-Imran, again, Jesus says that. Noah had says that, Hud, Saleh, Lot, Shuaib, all had said that. If we want to see what Al-Mizan says, again, manifest proof, Al-Mizan says the miracles he performed and wisdom refers to the divine teachings. So it's kind of the common understanding we have. He brought in, so wisdom refers to divine teachings he brought in the form of true beliefs and virtuous morals, which I think this is the one, and then actually that's essence of gospel. I'm not sure we have time to discuss the issue of the book and wisdom, Kitab al-Hikmah, and then whether maybe gospels are more of wisdom type and book is more Quran and Torah are more book type. But as I repeat, so the sentences Allah has, and wisdom refers to the divine teachings he brought in the form of true beliefs and virtuous morals. And then to make clear the Ubayyana lakum, and to make clear to you some of the things that you differ about, meaning these things they differ about in God's law concerning different deeds and happenings. So the dispute Jews have got regarding the laws and maybe some events in the past. People have added stuff
Dr.
to it.
Ghoddoussi, sorry to interrupt you. I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention we have not started the Abraham yet, right? I just want to make
Yes.
sure we
Yes.
complete that tonight so we don't continue that Abraham to the next session. So
Sure. Sure.
just
Yeah,
just just said you can track it. Thank you so much.
thank you. So I think uh, I think this, and then let me go to, I think enough we said about what the commentators have said. So we go to uh, maybe we can say uh, of the summary of the what we were discussing in this passage is this, and I add a little bit more to it. Look, the primary purpose of this preceding discussion was to demonstrate the significant degree to which this Surah al-Zukhruf, Jesus pericope, is steep in anti-Christological polemics and the consistent. Look, so all the mushrikeen was challenging, and what objection they raised in some sense maybe looks silly or means maybe they didn't get Quranic Christology, what was discussed in Surah Al-Maryam. So they assume Quran accepted the divinity of Jesus. But okay, I said there were instances they if they have been careful, they should not have get this idea. But at least here, Quran used their objection to clearly reject the Christology of the Christians too. But the way Quran does it, it does anti-Christianity polemics, uh, but it does it first partially affirm them, and or by referring a phrase or some idea, but then changes meaning or subverting it and reformulating some of the doctrines and put it in a new meaning, which emphasize always God power and rather Jesus divinity. The example was the last one, which is a sign of our knowledge of our. Okay, so in this sense, let's see. Uh, so verse 63 kind of recite it has maybe two main functions besides bringing miracles, that Jesus brought wisdom and clarified the disputes that the Israelites fell into. Okay, this idea is not alien to the Christology too. First, the fact that Jesus bring wisdom is mentioned in different places of New Testament. For example, Luke says, "I will give you words and a wisdom," which the Greek word is Sophia, and that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. So that fact, Jesus himself says, "I bring you wisdom," which is explicit, and then implicitly you can see much of his teachings is like that. Uh, but but you know what to say if we look carefully and put this verse in the background of polemics against Christians. That's pericope, look it together with not only this verse 63, and look a little bit deeper in it, and then you will see again Quran is challenging the whole pericope and this verse, some of the Christological view, which is like a curling of the moon, that ordinary people may not notice, but if you know the uh, theology Christianity, you notice Quran is directly targeting it. So, but the question remains why this particular criteria of Jesus cited here in the context of anti-Christological polemics, and what precisely Quran means about it. Uh, okay, so why Quran what Quran wants to emphasize or clarify regarding the wisdom and solving disputes. Again, one problem was the Jesus, as we said a little bit before, Jesus New Testament is more than a teacher of wisdom. He's wisdom personified. Again, because they make him divine. And then if we remember some of the discussion we had in the Proverb 8, they add some verses, which although is, I mean, for some groups are canonical, some is not, but you have the example wisdom personified. And then because they have God personified, wisdom personified, this kind of thinking was there. So Quran does not reject that Jesus brought wisdom, but kind of rejects that he's personification of Jesus wisdom. So I emphasize, although the primary identity of Christ affirmed and expounded upon the earliest church fathers usually have been he's a logos, uh, but sometimes now they started to assume he's being wisdom. Initially that early century, they thought wisdom is identify wisdom with Gabriel. And then that we have even Islamic philosophy too. They match Gabriel with the ʿabd, the 10th intelligence of Plotinus. So that you see in Abyssinia, other people, it is there. So some of these stuff are, common, they borrow, influence each other, and so on. But again, if you go to the Christianity, Origen is one of the first church fathers that uh, identified Jesus with wisdom too. So it has this kind of emphasized there. Um, but then, okay, one conclusion they have, if he's the wisdom incarnate, which partially is the corollary of this God incarnate, is the greatest teacher of wisdom. Okay, this could be accepted. Uh, but then they said much of this application of wisdom also was uh, he is the person correctly interpreted the Jewish law, idea that his roots in the New Testament too. Look, there is a question whether you can correct the law. I mean, we say sometimes halal Prophet Muhammad is halal to the end of times, and the haram of Prophet Muhammad is haram to end of times. So, so if it is the case, you cannot change it. So how a law which was given in Torah could be changed? So what was the nature of the law? So this goes back to some of the discussion we have. What we understood, we need wisdom, positive law, natural law, قانون تکوینی or قانون تشریع. And then we'll see even the next one, we see an example of it. So when Jesus came and sometimes uh, do not follow the apparently at least what the Jews believed should be the law, then the point was that okay, he is the manifest wisdom, and then he can change the law, and he can interpret the law, and he can and also solving the dispute. So sometimes you explain what is the difference opinion how this should be done, but sometimes you completely change, you abrogate the law or changing, bring a new law. This is a little bit different level of authority. I'm not going to delve much in it, but because actually we have a similar idea in next set, so maybe I expand it over there. Um, uh, so, and then the importance of this passage was that this still is the first passage chronology Quran that Quran very clearly engages extensively with the Christology, and then so we see that uh, uh, kind of correcting what the Christians believe. So look, for example, just as Jesus' virgin birth and his being embodiment of God's knowledge were reconceptualized, we saw them in the previous ones, and the last one that is not embodiment of God knowledge, but embodiment of our. So now it seems is being the wisdom of God is now again Quran is addressing. It's not wisdom of God, but bringer of wisdom, emphasizing. He has some wisdom coming with him. He's a bringer of wisdom rather than a pre-existent Sophia of that book of Proverbs. So, these are subtle one. Although here in this verse, Quran is much more in agreement with the Christian view, not totally rejecting it or completely reversing it, but still correcting it. So to summarize, the Surah al-Zukhruf portrayal of Jesus as a bringer of wisdom can be read as a continuation of the same role Jesus occupies in the Gospels in some way, some sense. However, in the light of polemically charged context of the passage, overall the whole passage, and several indications that is engaging with New Testament and patristic wisdom Christology, which I kind of jump on it and give you no examples what they taught, just give you the idea they taught is embodiment of wisdom and so on. It seems that Jesus' role as a bringer of wisdom, Surah al-Zukhruf, is not simply an echo of similar function attributed to him in the New Testament, but is rather subversion or repurposing of wisdom Christology. A technique that passage has repeatedly used this point. Quran does that. Even the story of prophets is similar, but it's become very different and different conclusion. We have it in the Surah to Hazrat Yusuf is a structure is the same, but the details are very different. Many other surahs are Quran is different, and actually I don't want to compare, but Mawlavi also sometimes does this. Many of the stories in Masnavi, there are other versions before him. Mawlavi completely upside down it, changing it and take it for himself and then give his own conclusion and give different character. So we emphasize Quran again, this time agrees with two aspects of Christology that they say is the embodiment of wisdom or wisdom personified, whatever it does mean. Quran says no, he's a bringing wisdom. And then, but then the fact that Jesus correct the differences of Jewish people in the law, Quran agreeing it, but again in its limitation. And as to what Quran itself means by Jesus' Hikmah in its immediate context, it is his clarification of Mosaic message regarding which the Israelites had fallen into dispute. Parallel verses that deal with the relationship between Israelite Jewish law and Jesus suggest further that this Hikmah clarification includes a lightening of the requirements of the law. Now, this question comes, as I said, how you can lighten the law, or which law you can lighten. I cannot, and I don't think, I mean, God can lighten the law that, for example, murder or adultery is good. Because remember, we stick to a rational view of not a non-Ash'ari. We will discuss second lecture, non-Ash'ari view, but Mu'tazili view that there is criteria of good and bad, separate, independent. So that kind of law God cannot lighten. But some positive law it can. And then we saw in the Quran one example, which was that issue of eating the meat of camel, which Jews very because diet. Okay, some laws are we can see positive law. For example, if the namaz is 2 rakah, 3 rakah, 4 rakah, or you do this some ritualistic ones. It's decided by God, but they can be changed. As Muslims initially were doing two rakah prayers, then it changed to three and four added to it. That's okay. There's nothing objectionable or some moral vices doing. Some is the middle way, dietary law. It seems there is some inherent benefit in it. We shouldn't eat carrion and blood and so on. So the change over there or peak, we believe there is something again rational here. It is something according to law of nature, natural law that we shouldn't eat pig meat because exceptional things, okay, is a utility analysis. But what about the day of which we see eating camel meat seems could be this level, but the Quran adds this was just something uh, uh, Jacob imposed on himself. The next topic we're going to discuss, we see one other of these law is the center, Sabbath law. And then whether day of Sabbath, day of rest should be Saturday, Sunday, Friday, and how it works. So with this, the fact that this issue of lightening of requirements of law is a little more complicated because some laws cannot be, if they're really inherently laws based on wisdom and natural law, no prophet can change it. But some of regulation of Sharia, for example, number of prayers or so on. But although I think for a while, I think some of us may think everything, every detail of Sharia is of this type. Some people say no, not everyone are like that. That's the whole issue of ethics and law. I mean, these are big philosophical questions. But let's go to our new discussion. I try to be faster. I'm a little bit late. Yeah, maybe I can do it with shortened question time. Okay, so the verses we have here, there is a challenge in the Surah An-Nahl, which we start. It is not clear that we have a unified pericope. With the verse which of our interest, we are not sure is really connected to the previous verses or is independent verse by itself, and where the passage starts and stops. But because the immediate verses before it, the story of Abraham, we can guess, okay, somewhat maybe it is related. So I will read the translation, and indeed, Abraham was a nation all by. So we start the verse 120 of Surah An-Nahl. Indeed, Abraham was a nation all by himself, obedient to God, a Hanif, and he was not a polytheist. Grateful as he was for his blessing, God chose him and guided him to straight path. We gave him good in this world, and in the hereafter he will indeed be among the righteous. Thereafter we revealed to you, saying, follow the creed of Abraham, a Hanif who was not a polytheist. The Sabbath was only prescribed for those who differed about it. Your Lord will indeed judge between them on the day of resurrection concerning that about which they differ. Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good advice, and dispute with them in a manner that is the best. Indeed, your Lord knows best those who astray from his way, and he knows best those who are guided. So I'll stop here, but look, this verse 125, which the word Hikmah has come, could be an independent verse for himself. Because if you read the whole surah to come over there, it just be a verse standing by himself. Is not necessarily, as I said, we discussed in structure of Quran. Sometimes partitioning surahs is not that easy. Sometimes the partitions are very clear, sharp. Sometimes the borders are so not clear. I mean, we don't know where I have to stop because even the other verses, I'm not sure. And then you see Allah will start from 100 verse 112 and then to 128, or yeah. And then, but okay, we're not discussing 126, 27, 28. But to understand so our focus is really the two verse will be 125 and 124 will be crucial, I think, if we still keep them connected. And then you see there is some dispute regarding Sabbath. and then we'll see how it works, and then why it's somehow Abraham is related. For now, we try to interpret the verse 125, which is started Udu ila sabila rabbika bil Hikmah, to this pericope about Abraham before it. Somehow I want to, under the light of that, say, okay, what's going on here? But I'm saying that's not 100% clear. That whether we have to interpret in the light of the whole surah or this verse stands by itself. Okay, let's see fast something about Surah An-Nahl. Is Makki, is but late Makki, revealed later, just before migration to Medina. Uh, uh, at that time, so the relationship prophet with the mushrikin is not very good, and then maybe one of few of the last arguments for they converting is given, and this surah is important because one type of style of argument it has, which I think is important for understanding wisdom too. So this surah is one of the most important of those of the Quran that point out the spiritual significance of nature. Substantial part of this surah are devoted to the wonders of the natural world and to rehearsing the specific blessings that God has bestowed to human beings through natural phenomena, including various kinds of livestock, of their benefits and uses, crops and vegetation, the celestial bodies, the sea and the bounties, and the mountains, streams, and other natural landmarks that guide human beings. The surah refers to four drinks with which God has blessed human beings: water, milk, a drink derived from the fruit of wine and honey, as well blessings of spouses and children, and various kinds of dwelling and protections. Look, this is still, I think, is most effective way people, human beings, come to God. Look at the wonder of nature, what is called Burhan, or sometimes they call it telel, which they call argument, although despite disputes on it, and especially after evolution. Before evolution was very powerful, solid. After Darwinian evolution, some questions raised in it is effectiveness, but it still is the most effective one. And actually look into the nature, look into the wonder, reflecting on it, the beauty, the complications, the marvel, it is there. If it's somebody who's open, it's really the important one. And uh and that's matching also the wisdom. We discussed that, although we didn't see examples in the wisdom literature before Islam, we saw that one Enoch book. We have some examples like that. Quran has, okay, more lofty one. Unfortunately, we don't have time to look the examples of Surah An-Nahl because all are the before our passage. Uh, and then, and as I said, much of the surah is also concerned with the Meccan idolaters, including denial of arrogance toward the prophet, their plotting against him, the corrupt pagan practices, and the accusation of prophet and fabricated revelation. And then containing the surah repeated warnings about impending punishment to come in this world and hereafter for those who disbelieve. And verse 112 is just before and very close to our verses we discussed, and maybe it's somehow alluded to it. It presents a parable about the punishment of the town that was like pagan town of Mecca and ungrateful for its blessing. So the verse 112 is interesting. Maybe if time we have to look at it. Because it's really, I think, it's description a city like Mecca. We got like we have in ḥiktilāf al-Quraysh, we have the discussion when we're discussing Yemen, the two this two surah of Fil and ḥiktilāf al-Quraysh, Quraysh, which explaining the blessing God and protection God give to that city, and then the prosperity they get. That parable is exactly like that. A city which received those security and prosperity, but was ungrateful and then destroyed. So really, it's a warning to the Meccans. Look, be grateful, but be message, accept the message of Prophet. There is something just before our passage of our interest discusses the dietary laws that Muslims should observe, suggesting that more extensive dietary laws were given to the Jews. Yeah, this is the part we can see the issue that why Muslim dietary law is less than the Jews. So is dietary law a part of law of nature, which I think wisdom suggests they're not unchangeable? Or dietary laws, some are positive law. Actually, the one Quran lists is much less than what we have actually nowadays. And those are very clearly repugnant ones, that eating blood, eating pork meat or and blood and dead animal, and also the one which is as given as sacrifice to other gods or idols. We don't have any other ones listed in Quran or there. But the whole issue, at least we see, this is also related. So the Jews may come, because we know that for the Jews prior to the laws, and they would object how on the earth you can have less restricted dietary laws. You see, the objection they have is how you can suspend, for example, any punishment for murder or adultery. Like somebody permit adultery or, homosexuality or something like that. I mean, look, these are their objection was that. But exactly here is Quran answering them. But again, maybe it was more accurate. We discussed these, which Allah did it. But again, we don't have time, but I give you the hint and you can look the idea. And the surah closes by instructing the Prophet and his followers about how to deal with the religious opponents, which is the important verse we discussed, disputing with them in the most virtuous manner, which is verse 125, the pivotal verse we have to discuss. And by responding with restraint and patience, they have been wronged. And okay, so this is the general idea. And then let's see some of these verses. I may be a little bit going faster. Okay, the first one is so we go to passage, and Ibrahim kana ummatan qanitan lillah hanifa wa lam yakun minal mushrikeen. So we have different translation. Indeed, Abraham was, they're similar here, translations, there's not much difference. Indeed, Abraham was a nation all by himself, obedient to God, a hanif, and he was not a polytheist. But although this verse, if we have time, it has two big terms which take a while to commentary. One is how on the earth Ibrahim is ummah in itself, and then what does it mean be Hanif? That's okay. Again, we see classical commentators understood differently. One example is maybe is respect, of them that okay, let me go in the order. One thing many traditional commentators thought is this: okay, maybe because Ibrahim embodied or referencing to Ibrahim is reference to his children coming after him, his descendants, which we know both Jews and Arabs, Ishmaelites and son of Isaac, Israelites are his descendants. So somehow maybe Ibrahim in this sense is Ummah, which is the father of these people. Maybe, but I'm not 100% sure is this. Some commentators suggest Abraham constituted community unto himself insofar as all good qualities were combined and perfected in him. Yeah, I mean, he was so good, and then it's like complimented. For example, one soccer player, for example, Messi, you can say, oh, he's or Ronaldo, he's a football team in itself. I mean, he alone is the most important person. So he's not really a football team. He's not a really an but is a praise that how he was important in his devotion and effect he have. Some other people have come and say, okay, maybe because I don't think this is true. He was the only believer on earth at that time, or at least in his land at the time while all others were disbelievers. So maybe he was alone consisting of ummah of believers. Okay, this could be, but I'm not sure this is true. But others note that the word of community, ummah, has the same root as imam, so ummah and imam have the same roots. So, which is a title later on Quran in some other verses like 124 of Baqarah or verse 73 is Surah 21, and Anbiya ascribed to Abraham his sons. So they are imam in some sense, so Ibrahim is ummah. This is again the guess of some classical commentators. Uh, some understood because he was teacher of the good, because of his da'wah, Ummah was formed. It's not just his children are important, but the ones because of his function as a prophet or da'wah, people converted to him. So he formed an Ummah. He was, and then because he was a leader and role model, to others follow or imitate. So this is the idea. But although our concern is not, I just have to move faster. The Hanif is maybe more important and relevant. Abraham is further described as a Hanif, and not among idolaters. This is a very common description regarding Abraham. I will show it to you because Hanif is an important word. Generally, Hanif is denote a primordial monotheist who is neither a Jew nor a Christian. This is associated a lot with Abraham in the Quran more than anyone else, the word Hanif. But also in Islamic tradition, describe Prophet Muhammad's spiritual life prior to his becoming a prophet. They consider he was Hanif. There were some other monotheists in Arabia. Maybe we can call them the religion of Fitra. They have some monotheism of Fitra. And especially the time Abraham manifested best. We don't, it's not in these verses, but when he argued with the polytheists of this time regarding the idols and breaking them, and he put the axe on the shoulder of the biggest one of them and told them, he, kind of arguing this kind of these are actually wisdom. Or when he, as a youngster, looked to the moon and he said, "This is my God," but when the moon set, he says, "No, this is my not God." Then the stars came in and said, "These are my God." Then when they set again, and the sun, So this is the kind of wisdom or natural wisdom, or the type maybe wisdom is referring, without the word wisdom used on those contexts in the Quran, but Abraham manifests the wisdom. And that type of religion, which is coming from inner conscious and maybe we can call it Hanafiya. So they were monotheists, but not necessarily maybe having all the Sharia regulations and following the natural law, moral law. Maybe they don't steal, they don't lie, they don't kill, but what Jews called it Noahid law. There's some very basics, they don't fornicate, stuff like that. But the other stuff, okay, definitely, maybe they do some Hajj, as we'll see, but many other regulations, Sharia was not prescribed for them. So as we can say, Hanif refers to a person who's inclined to the central creed of Islam or submission to the one God. And this Hanafa is said to preserve Abrahamic rites of circumcision and Hajj and pilgrimage to Kaaba and Mecca. But why it is Abraham is mentioned here in this context? This verse is the most longest one we discuss, and then we go forward because to put the background. The mention of Abraham in these verses is to make it clear that to the Meccan idolaters that Abraham cannot be associated with them, or nor they with him, because he rejected idolatry and they embraced it. So there are some reports, and makes sense that Meccans wish to associate themselves with Abraham and maybe consider themselves the true followers or followers of creed of Abraham, their forefather. Look, first, that story of the building of Kaaba. I mean, Islamically, we have to accept it. It's and I think the trace of that story was existent among the Mushrikin before Islam. I mean, maybe Western scholarship or the non-Muslims dispute that, but that's it there. So the house was built by Abraham, and Mushrikin also believe that. And so that must be story was there. So they maybe want to claim something, some affiliation, affinity with Abraham, but all the distorting the real main message of Abraham, which is monotheism. There become polytheists. Abraham was destroyer of idols, but these guys were setting up idols. But the other thing is that definitely mushrikeen were aware of Jewish and Christian religions around them, and then maybe missionaries come to them, or when they go to the trips to those neighboring areas, they were aware. And then sometimes you want to a little bit embellish your religion, which we at least kind of can compete with them. You shows, okay, but I have a religion too. And then being ancient religion at those times was very uh, give credence. For example, Romans accepted Jews, although they noticed these guys are a little bit eccentric, but because this ancientness of Judaism and some of the rituals accepted. So it's possible this mushrikeen in those recent decades before Prophet Muhammad. Maybe they, after knowing Christianity, Judaism, they claim our religion is religion of Abraham too. I haven't checked those reports, but some people said some report. I repeat it again. Some reports that the Meccans wish to associate themselves with Abraham wrongly consider themselves to be following the creed of Abraham, their forefather. This is the Makhshari has said that. So this is the one. And Al-Mizan is also okay regarding Ummah. You know, Al-Mizan al-Ghari Ummah says was a nation obedient to God. Abraham was a nation obedient to God, means he stood as a community in the worship of God, akin to saying someone is a tribe unto themselves. That's how I say, like Messi is a football team in himself. So it's a praise to him. That's so important. He was so devoted to us. And it seems reported that Ibn Abbas have some narration from Ibn Abbas with this meaning, which could be, if it is true, it could be reliable. And then, as I said, the other options are kind of similar options, which I listed them. I read them for you. So this new one with emphasize Ibn Abbas is there. The other ones are we listed before. Allah may reject them or something like that. And the Hanif again just simply says, and he was not one of the polytheists. And then one other feature to Hanif is added maybe in Mizan is that Hanif is someone who inclines away from extremes and towards the path of moderation balance. So moderation balance also is considered a feature of being a Hanif. Look, I just want to show you Hanif is really 12 times come in the Quran. 11 Hanif, one time is Hanafa is a couple of times it's also Hanafa is plural. About 12 times I think it's come. And then very often is associated with Ibrahim, قل بل ملة إبراهيم حنيفا ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا لكن كان حنيفا. So I mean, every one of them maybe wants to claim Ibrahim. Jews and Christians want to claim it naturally, and Mushrikeen want to claim it. So I am not. We cannot discuss all the verses, but the one which is very crucial, a little bit different, is this one. إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا. This looking religion of fitra, and then looking to by moral conscious natural law, looking to the who created samawat wal as. This feature of Hanif could be important. Or again, when أقم وجهك للدين حنيفا ولا تكن من المشركين. We don't have time to go to Hanif. Hanif could be a lecture for itself. So just I want you to see that. The other verse, I'm not going to spend on it. Look, it says regarding Abraham that grateful as he was for his blessing, he chose him and guided him to straight path. He was very thankful to the blessing God to give to him, and very sincerely thankful. And then this has been recommended. Even we have proverb, if you thank the blessing God given to you, God will increase it. And if you don't thank it, so kind of you may lose it. And thanking them is properly using that, be thankful to God and so on. And then because he was great, the order is important, because he was grateful and thankful for his blessing, then God showed sincerity and goodness, choose him and guide him to straight path. So I think for now, I think this discussion is enough. I don't think we need to go more. It's not changing much to full discussion we have. And then again, it's Quran says, وَأَتَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً. For this, can we choose him and put him the straight path? We give him good in this world. That's a prayer we usually do. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. That means he had a good life here. He has blessing, including health, peace of mind, but also material wealth. But then إِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ, in hereafter, and that means in hereafter is hasanat. We pray رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. When he's considered salihin, which is among very high ranking the hereafter, definitely he received hasanat for the akhirah too. And I don't think we need to again. This meaning is clear, or at least anything here is not have much importance for the total discussion. But then again, this Hanif comes. Ibrahim. So this time, God talks to the Prophet. Therefore, we reveal to you and to the Prophet Muhammad as saying to you or asking you, follow the creed of Abraham. And he was a Hanif, which we try to explain what kind of it's understood with Hanif, and who was not a polytheist. So again, so essentially maybe telling other people the Islam, as we have another verse that is Qur'an, and Islam is closest to the path of Abraham, and this path of the Prophet is Hanif. Look, if the path of Abraham is Hanif, and especially with the next two verses, that's the argument kind of we want to claim that this Hanif was religion of Fitrah, and its Sharia and the laws it included were laws of natural law, not necessarily positive law. And its morality was that fundamental morality. And then, because remember, again, this is the context of disputes about dietary law. The Jews are objecting why your dietary laws are much less than ours. How on earth you could be the prophet of God and you don't follow these? They have lots of details. But then we see just another example next verse, which is that one is explicitly tied to Abraham too. So then we see wisdom. So look, we have three verses. Here is, as prophet, follow the religion of Hanif, which is the creed of Abraham. Follow the creed of Abraham, which is to be a Hanif. He was a Hanif. That means you be a Hanif too, or your followers be Hanif too, in one sense, at least at this stage. Then we have one other dispute about one of that positive laws we will see. And then we have that issue of wisdom. So we kind of, if we can tie these verses together, we want to tie them using these three verses. But regarding the meaning of verse is clear, but let me emphasize. So the prophet is commanded to follow the creed of Abraham, rejecting idol worship, believing in the one God, or calling people to God's oneness in a gentle manner through sound proofs and arguments, which we see. This is Fakhr Razi says, but it's the basis of the verse 125. And then the creed of Abraham is connected to the being Hanif and not among idolaters. For example, we have it also Surah Al-An'am. So I think there's nothing extra. We sit here and see. We know that many verses said closest people to Abraham are Muslims and so on. So, and then maybe we can say that this verse emphasizes the quality of Abraham inclining to the truth and his rejection of polytheism. Okay, it says, is Hanifa ma kana min al-mushrikeen. So these are two features of Ibrahim, and that's what the Prophet asked to be followed. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. I think is the crucial one. Look, suddenly you have okay, let me read the English. The Sabbath was only prescribed for those who differed about it. Okay, this English is a little bit misleading. I will explain, but because this is an apparent translation of Arabic. Your Lord will indeed judge between them on the day of resurrection concerning that about which they differ. Okay, is not that they have the reading is apparently you feel it says they have some differences about maybe which day to take holiday, and that God send them, okay, this would be Saturday. No, it is reverse, and Allah have discussed that, and especially that fee sometimes is show a causal chain. And if you read it carefully and discuss it, it makes sense. Although it's not 100%, even Allah Ta'ala himself said, look, God sent the the regulation or injunction regarding Sabbath for the Jews. And then Jews start to dispute in it. Some wholeheartedly accepted and followed. And then look, Sabbath was serious. That is, and then they follow it today. And you see the regulations are very serious. Sometimes they interpret, they have to not to do any work. They have not to light any fire. So, and then they have to devote to God. So light any fire means meaning not light any fire, not cooking, not driving a car, because that means ignition, starting car ignition. They have not problem to turning on the TV because that generates light and heat. So this is very, very serious thing it's doing right now. Right now, all elevators have special buttons, so it's a big deal. Everybody, Friday evening starts to Saturday. Now, some wholeheartedly accept it and they follow it. Some uh, maybe reject it. I mean, I don't know what the situation became. It seems they reject, but some try to trick it. I mean, which we have this. They try to accept it, like kol shari. So finding things around it, and that story came of them coming the Quran. They shouldn't do work. They put some tents, some nets. Sorry, nets, and then when we have water come up, the fishes will come here, trap in the net. When the water goes back, ebb and flow, the fishes trap in the net, and they come collect the fishes after Sabbath. So in this way, they literally didn't work during Sabbath, but they catch the fish during Sabbath. So, and then because they trick God and God punished them severely. And we have this, even I heard a rabbi was complaining in U.S. that one of the worst injunction we give was that after the automobile was invented, some guys asked if is it okay we just drive a car to come into the synagogue for Sabbath meeting and we just ignite it for that. And then they said yes. But that the rabbi said that caused the Jewish neighborhood spread out, so not to be close to the synagogues. Because if you want to follow Sabbath, you have to go to the like Friday prayer, you have to go to Sabbath prayer and you have to walk. And then so because you have to walk, you have to leave close by. So this is the issue. But what is the issue here? Is this Quran is in the next verse, or if we connect it to the Abrahamic verse, is said this Sabbath wasn't part of the creed of Abraham. Was not part of the religion of Hanafa. Because why this verse just after Abraham and the creed of Abraham? That means Quran is emphasizing this Sabbath, which is a positive law. It is not with these all regulations is not part of Abrahamic law. It is imposed on the Jews, and it was a restriction, and it's somehow maybe punishment in this restricted form. The same way, for example, eating camel meat was a restriction. Jacob, maybe as a Nazir or other thing, imposed on himself. And so it is not the simple case that okay, our Sabbath is Saturday. Jewish Sabbath is Saturday, our Friday, Christian is Sunday, because many people thought these people were disputing. They mostly, some interpreters assumed the dispute was before Joel Sabbath, because the apparent reading of the verse is like that. But as Allah may interpret, and is a correct interpretation, and you have to go to form of Arabic, and then the way sometimes fee functions, that this Joel Sabt caused the dispute. That is, the dispute is regarding the Sabbath. It's not the Sabbath, okay, yeah, Sabbath, or is not regarding which day it is, for example, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but how they have to observe it, what level you have to observe it, and what degree you have to observe it. I mean, they have stories that the Jews choose the Sabbath because it is the day God rests. Christians take it Sunday because it's the day God started the creation. Sabbath was the day after the creation ended, and Juma is the day creation was ended. These stories are added, but I think really I agree that this makes more sense here. So let me go forward to the last verse. So I emphasize it. Although Allah said that, but some classical commentators say that this. So let me read this part. The Sabbath is mentioned in the Quran as an obligation established for the children of Israel at the time of covenant of Mount Sinai, and the Jews are chastised in several verses for not observing it properly. This is a serious thing for them. The present verse, however, reiterates that the Sabbath is not a universal aspect of religious practice. That is not part of natural law, is not maybe a positive law that can change, like dietary law, some part of dietary law. But for the Jews, every law it was very important. I mean, I'm saying is, but cannot be changed by us, but can be changed by God. So it was only ordained for those who differed concerning it, understood to mean the Jews. At least it was ordained only for the Jews, but the difference come after the legislation, not before. And then it is emphasized by Qurtubi, it was not part of the religion of Abraham, nor is it part of religious practice established by the Prophet Muhammad. Because it is not part of religion of Abraham, because the previous verse, the Quran is arguing, if we connect this verse to the previous verse, which it seems is connected, then this is the meaning come. That the Jews defending it may one example of differences the Jews had, besides what to trick it around, it's what items it covered. That the Jews, some people, Jews thought hunting or fishing permissible on this day, which I give the examples. And I think I'm okay with this. Let's go forward. So this Sabbath, it become this is important thing. This is Sabbath important thing. But now let's go to this one. Here we have this is an important verse. Okay, there are many dimensions to it, but we have to look what we want to conclude of it. Look, it says, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good advice, and dispute with them in a manner that is best. Indeed, your Lord knows best those who stray from his way, and he knows best those who are guided. Okay, people have very different view of what it means. But one thing I want you to notice, this covers this is three means of invitation. Hikmah, Mawzatul Hasana, wa Jadalhum billati hi ahsan. But they are ranked. Hikmah is without qualification. Hikmah is without qualification. And that means hikmah is something good in itself. Maybe something fitri. People will understand. Or again, natural law or something good. Because Mu'azzah is qualified with Hasana. You have to give admonition, but you have to give good admonition or proper way admonition. One way you have to practice what you preach. Okay, if you're not practicing what you're preaching, your preaching will not affect reverse. And then jadalhum billati, not only hasana, jadalhum billati hiya ahsan. What's the best way? Because you dispute, you're quarreling. If become mera or jadal becomes hostile, it wouldn't act not right. And then, as Allama says, because this is also training in the Islamic philosophy, this covers all the three methods of dispute or argument in usually taught in logic. Wisdom is Burhan. I mean, we can say it's either mathematical proof or something very clear to the conscious. And then جادلهم بالتي أحسن is like a rhetoric, uh, and then Jadal is dialectic. So and the Burhan is demonstration. So kind of Allama says this is referring Quran in the three modes of discuss in the discipline of logic by Aristotle, this Aristotelian philosophy, demonstration, rhetoric, and dialectic. But you know, this maybe I kind of we are aware of the meaning of it. So, what is the way of your Lord you're inviting? Is this creed of Ibrahim, Dina Hanif, and you have argued with them with Hikmah, which I think some of the examples was actually we haven't not have it here, but I mentioned it. Ibrahim did the way he argued regarding those idols, that you can call it maybe jadalhum that he asked, what to show them these idols cannot do anything when he put the axe on the shoulder of the biggest idol. Uh, Maybe the arguments he gave regarding the moon, star, sun, and which they fool they set, uh, is a mixture of hikmah, mozatul hasana. You have to have in mind, but to give some time for I think because I can rely on what you know, I don't need to go detail. I'm not commenting in this verse. To be true, this is a big verse. A commentary can get one lecture by itself, but I want to connect it to Hikmah, and at least the way we are interpreting Hikmah, which, as I said, this verse could have been a verse alone by itself, not necessarily tie the previous verses, but we are tying it, especially the two last verses before it. The Hanif, Creed of Abraham, and the Sabbath. And then the conclusion we can get is this way. Following the polemical rejection that the religion of Abraham does not include the Sabbath, the passage picks up the address to the prophet once again and commands him to call the way of your Lord with wisdom, al-hikmah, and fair admonition. So the Jews were disputing, okay, why you guys don't have Sabbath? We have it, you should have it too. But and then you claim you're a religion of Abraham, and the Quran says, look, this wasn't part of religion of Abraham, which is Hanif. So the conclusion is this: the flow of the passage, whereby the prophet is told to follow Abraham's religion, and this does not include Sabbath, would suggest that the calling to the God way with Hikmah is means to calling to the way of Abraham. Okay, and then the way of Abraham, we want to argue, is natural morality, that Hanif, that wisdom is that kind of knowledge or moral understanding that people can discover sometimes without scripture, or is at least the examples in the Quran referring to the wisdom are that kind of morality which is a little bit distinct from. I mean, I'm not saying Sharia law doesn't have wisdom, but and the best example will be next lecture, which we go to the Surah Isra, and we'll see what is listed as wisdom. This is the first time we have a comprehensive Islamic list from verse 22 39. And then we can see is that type that every religion should have. I can change the rak'ah. Look, these prayers we have, many of those salihun were not doing before Islam. And then we have Quran says those people were good. قلة من الآخرين سلة من الأولين. The percentage of those super good ones uh, uh, are more in ancient times than later times. So we cannot anticipate they were following the detail of Islamic Sharia as we do. I'm not saying Islamic Sharia is not it, is the way to train to go forward to go the path of spirituality, morality. It is, but there are parts of these laws I think my opinion is that should be every religion will have it. Those are wisdom type. And then the other ones have wisdom in it, but they could be changed. I mean, I stop here. I know this opened many philosophical points, but I want to put any questions. And then I think, because still we are searching what is the meaning of wisdom here is, and we kind of we see it in different contexts, uh, is a little bit different. Okay, I will stop here. If any question or anything, I would be happy to answer.